All right, and hello again. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I'm the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And today, the episode is on making the mature decision or making a mature decision. So, I have had a lot of interesting conversations in the very recent past. And so recent that it could be blink of an eye. It was yesterday or even a few moments ago. I've had a lot of interesting conversations and had a lot of interesting trying events that you don't normally have on a day-to-day basis. When you have those kind of events, you'll have like a disarmament because you don't normally have the experience necessary to overcome the challenge quickly or to make the best choice for everyone involved quickly. Now, there's ways of actually speeding up making good decisions, but I'll make this a little less intangible, a little more tangible, if you will. Like involving, you know, relationships, if you will, and the end portion or a possibility for a different position or whatever that may be. But having a lot of that emotional basis kind of holding you in place whenever you're being asked something that you have little knowledge or experience or wisdom in, if you will, maturity in. It can leave you making decisions that you may not be 100% on board for, or you might feel, you know, that it's a rushed thing. So this most recent experience has got, it's been an interesting one to say the least. It's been a very developing one to see who I can be during, challenging times. And I've seen this of others, and it's easy to analyze other people going through it because you're just kind of, you may have a background of experience and emotion surrounding a particular experience that looks very similar. Like someone says they're going through a breakup and you've been through a breakup before. So you're like, oh, I know what those are like. But there's so much involved in it that if you don't ask, you can't really compare apples for apples, if you will. Forgive the actual analogy on that or the colloquialism. But you still have a relatability that a lot of times will default everything that's necessary to really get to what's going on. So we make decisions based off of our counsel, whether our counsel is completely internal or if it is external. But who sits on the board of your counsel is also a very beneficial factor. It is good to have a lot of different types of representation so you can understand, as long as you understand that person's or that particular element, what it represents. So if you have somebody on your counsel that is very emotionally reactive, then you know how emotionally reactive people would behave to an extent based off of that person's behavior. Not all consuming, but you have a general gist of the behavior there. And then the same thing for other aspects, you have somebody who's highly intelligent or highly, thoughtful. Same thing. You have a lot of intellect in a particular direction. Are they all consuming intelligent, or are they mathematically intelligent, or are they dramatically intelligent, or what is their intelligence, right? Every one of the aspects of the human being has all of these things. Like, what area are we experienced in that we have such a developed characteristic or a trait that we can, seek that person's advice or recognize that advice being based in that particular element. So to continue to make this real is, the current place that I'm at in, my emotional life and my, my relationship life. And the current standing is, that I am single, but there's a lot of things surrounding it that the counsel that comes along and friends that make their choices or what they would not, or what they would do, or would not do, then that is, it's a wonderful thing to take in consideration a person's perspective, but at the same time, it's like the episode talking about, emotional chess, asking for advice from others. Sometimes people just give you advice and then you just take whatever information that they're going to give you, and you might just go ahead and put it in because it feels the best. It just feels like it's the most justifiable or the most defensible position. So I was given a trying question, and there's a good deal of things that get in the way. Like there's urgency of being replaced. There's should I or should I not, put effort in to reconstruct something. But if it's 100% authentic, then it would be, like without a doubt, there's no question about that particular position. But I've had the insight to recognize that there's a good deal of fear involved, that fear of being replaced if I don't take action, or that, so it's not allowing the full development, what's necessary to make the best choices. In the sense of being the best choices is based off of the best outcome for all parties included, not the most superficial, being myself, or being the most immediate, being whatever brings the greatest deal of satisfaction at this moment, not just for myself, but for other people, but for the long-term consequences, if you will. And I don't mean consequences as if it's polarized, that's a negative context, but consequences is the result of any action. So the long-term outcomes, if you will, if that's more pleasant to hear, although that's censorship and I'm not too much of an advocate for that crap. Outcomes. Consequences, baby. So as I'm, was put into this position, I just had that insight that I could actually make a rash decision that's not based in a lot of maturity. It's actually based in something that you could say it's maturity, but it's a lower level of maturity, something that you would develop in a time whenever things are presented as being so permanent. As children, we see the world as being really damn permanent for everything that we do and choose and all the rest of this. But as adults, we realize that there's still a lot of opportunities that can be present as time goes on, just like as if not taking this moment and making the best choice in the sense that it is based off of, I need the fire to be put out immediately, or I need this to be something that's directly, addressed without hesitation. At this moment, it's more, and from this insight I'm having, is that it's best to slow down for a second, realize what's driving my actions. Where is my why? Like really get clear about where my why is. Why am I wanting to rush? Why am I wanting to postpone? Why am I wanting to continue? Why am I wanting to dismiss? Like really get down to the entirety of it, like flesh out all of it rather than just take quick actions. That's what I would actually consider to be a more mature or a highly mature position. Not to say that it's the highest, because I don't know what the highest mature position would be. Just because how do you really measure as a whole without really putting in counsel? So as I was talking about actually having counsel, and this is something that I've requested of a friend of mine, is there so few people that can actually occupy that space for what is needed in this conversation for me. So I've asked a friend of mine to present himself in a way that would be a somewhat unbiased position, as he does have the capacity to try to see from every position as much as possible, but not try to slip into tribalism as being my buddy, as I would consider that my buddy and taking action solely based off being my buddy would be more or less just a sycophant. I really don't request, and actually I don't request anyone in my life be a sycophant. I do not want anyone to suffocate their own self-expression to satisfy an idea or a need that the other person has without speaking your voice. I don't need people to just agree with me just because agreement seems like it's the best option. being the best option, excuse me, being the best option for, some idea that isn't an idea of equal playing grounds, or an idea of equality in conversation. Really don't want anybody to just slide into, I think this is what he wants to hear, so I better say it. Ugh, yeah. So I encourage all of my friends to hold the position of speak your mind, be you. Tell me what you really feel, what you really think. Huh. So, all right, enough floundering about in this episode. I can say that as the times were very trying recently, there was a time that I realized that I was losing a lot of like all of this guy that I know. Like there was this like the overwhelming like shock of everything, and then the childish behavior that can come out of it, which is not necessarily a bad thing that childish behavior came out of it. It's kind of interesting to know that it's a possibility, right? Like I could really just get down in the mud and wallow around with the other children. It's nice to know that. And I don't mean children in the sense of like accusing an adult of being a child, but more of, being childish in mind for whatever reason because of my level of maturity in that particular area. Emotions are one of the most challenging things to actually develop in, because most people don't have a safe space to grow in them. Most people spend a lot of time being chastised either by themselves or by others for feeling a certain way. In the United States, predominantly in the circles that I've been involved with. And I speak to people from all over the world fairly regularly. I would say that there's a great deal of censorship that's been put on us that really disables the opportunity to speak your mind. And that has far-reaching consequences, because then it gets to the point where you are conditioning people to be sycophants. Yeah, that's an interesting view, because I haven't really explored too much in that direction, but now I am. But I have noticed this. There's a lot of people that just say what they feel is like it's another game of chess there. Or, actually, I think this would be more of an accurate analogy is a game of checkers. I think Terrence for that one. In this particular setup, because checkers is a lot more simplistic than chess in this. And when you're asked something and you just make the best decision because you don't want the person to be upset with you, that would be just a quick decision that really has little thought put into it. So as I was put into the position of being disarmed, or actually just realizing that I was disarmed developmentally, it was actually pretty fascinating to witness my own behaviors, the behaviors of the other persons involved, where my mind chose to go, what the consequences were on my body, late nights, things like that. It's been a very fascinating journey. Not one that I actually suggest for the faint of heart. That, I guess, maybe a little pun intended. But it's definitely been a fascinating journey that we can't really prepare ourselves for. Like riding a bicycle, you can't really prepare yourself for it necessarily. But if you could imagine what being a grief counselor would be like, an authentic grief counselor versus somebody who is just doing it as, when I say authentic, I mean somebody who's been through the challenges often enough that they have enough maturity to guide a real life example type of maturity to drive somebody whenever they're, guide them when they're going through their challenges. So, yeah, making mature decisions. Yeah. What is the most mature choice? One of the things that makes a mature decision is what is the outcome require? What will be the responsible outcome of this? Like what will happen? What can happen? So that was a very interesting moment for me to realize that I was functioning in something that was more of a survival-based position. Survival not for me, but for the idea of what we were talking, what the relationship stood for. And now it's more of, that's fascinating. I was willing to actually recreate more of the same so that that idea could live, so that idea doesn't go away. That was fascinating because I realized that there was a lot of fear that was driving which direction I would go, what I would do, what I would say, how I would behave. And I realized that no matter what, the friendship that I have with this particular person is not something I'm willing to jeopardize. And in that, I woke up in the grief stages you'd call acceptance, which is the final stage of grief. I felt like I was washed of all of the atrocious experiences, the feelings, the sensations, the reactions that came prior. Now, I don't mean atrocious as in like, the most banished concept of like an experience. Oh, don't do that. That's atrocious. But the reality of, oh my, like this is really, really fascinating where my mind went. To know that that was so far outside of my day-to-day mental occupancy, that kind of atrocious, that kind of holy shit. There was all sorts of positions that came out of, that were involved from the moment of discovery to the moment of acceptance. There was so much that actually took place. It felt like sitting in a NASCAR and not realizing that, you just called for a taxi, and all of a sudden you realize you're in a NASCAR going around, the Daytona 500 Speedway. It really felt a lot like that. It's like, holy shit, what is happening? Uh, yeah. So finding out what the best decision is, or the most mature decision is I've realized that there's only so much that I have the ability to walk through myself and make very mature decisions. And then there's areas that I haven't developed myself enough in to make a decision that will not end in the best for all people involved, in ramifications of continuation, to more people involved generations away of the idea, as well as in my lineage, my own family tree, if you will, but also my social family tree, my cultural family tree, the ripples on the pond that affect others. Because whether we like to admit it or not, if you're in a bad mood, it affects somebody else. And that has a psychic infectious position for some people. And they become replicators of that mood because they're so easily pliable in themselves based off. There's so many reasons, in my opinion, why we do that. I'll explore it for just a second, but I promise not to belabor this one. But I would say that people are quick to adapt to another person's psychic position, or their psyche position, if you will, where they currently are based off of their behavior because of the level of authority, the care, the like, the love, the want, the desire that person is for you. And you may instantly accept their position without really considering it. So if they're in a bad mood, you may shift to being more in a bad mood, or easily swayed towards a bad mood because of an authority that you have just demonstrated that they're not in such a good mood. And it may not be to the same level of their upset, but it's still presently available. It's not necessarily a weak-minded position as much as it is more of a conformist-minded position, in the sense that I would say weak could be an invalid position, but a conformist is a kind of a consideration of influences that we've been through. So conformity is a bit of a challenge at times too, but how do we conform? All right, so I won't belabor you any further into that inquiry, but as to what I've gone over so far, I can say that a mature decision is you have a lot of ability to make a mature decision, and being what a mature decision is based off of your level of experience and understanding what the outcomes is to that, what the long-term consequences of that is. The further into the future you can actually see what those actions would do would be one portion of a measurement of maturity in that decision. There's only so much we can be responsible for, though. So with that being said, consider who would be the best counsel whenever you're pushed or you're in a challenging position. Like even in this, there's quite a bit. I would say that I'm at about 75% self-satisfied in the decisions that I'm making at the moment for this particular situation. But then there's about 25% of it that I really am seeking outside counsel with. And I've requested of a good friend to fill that seat. It may not be the only person that I consult with, and most likely won't be, because other minds create other beautiful opportunities of understanding more because different perspectives are present. But I'm really actually looking forward to this conversation with this gentleman just because of his level of insightfulness that he's demonstrated so far. So I guess you could call this part one of this episode, because there's still going to be more to it. I mean, I may have come across as rambling, and even to myself during this recording, I felt like I've rambled a little bit just because of, this is part of the consequences of when your mind is occupied, or when you're in a position that is not as easy as vanilla or chocolate, right? But it has a lot more value than an immediate satisfaction. So with that, thank you for listening to another episode of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. I'm the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia and other things that you will know about in the very near future. If you like the video, by all means, please share it. Comment below. If you'd like to be a guest speaker or to be a guest on the show, please either actually email me at chadbrochures@gmail.com. That is ChadBrochers @gmail.com. Thank you so much again. I look forward to your feedback. I look forward to your shares. I look forward to the video likes. I look forward to all of it. And I am looking forward to all of the clarity. So have a good day, and I will catch you guys later.